Imagine a scenario where you walk into a room, unshaken, undisturbed, and completely at peace with who you are. You need nothing from anyone, not their validation, approval, or even their attention. You're entirely self-sufficient. Now picture the reaction of those around you, the ones who are driven by their ego, the ones who measure their worth by how others see them. What happens when you show up, unaffected by their judgments and indifferent to their praise? It breaks their ego. In a world that thrives on comparison, external validation, and constant striving for approval, the Stoic philosophy offers a radical perspective. You needed nothing, and it broke their ego. The idea of being truly independent of external forces, of not needing anything to define your worth, challenges the very foundation of ego-driven behavior. While most people seek affirmation and approval, Stoics have learned to cultivate something far more powerful, an inner peace that requires no external validation. But here's the twist. This unshakable self-sufficiency is not only liberating for you, it's often unsettling for others. Their pride, built on the expectation of being needed, begins to crumble when they realize you aren't playing by the same rules. This is where Stoic wisdom enters the scene. A philosophy not just for personal growth, but for disrupting the world around you. It's not about arrogance or pride. It's about embracing the freedom of needing nothing. Through the lens of Stoicism, we will explore how your unbothered state of mind can break down others' inflated egos, shift the dynamics of your relationships, and ultimately transform the way you view yourself and the world. If this idea excites you, if you want to understand how you can live with such powerful emotional resilience, then you're in the right place. Stick around, because we're about to dive deep into the profound wisdom of Stoicism. This is more than just a philosophy, it's a tool for real-life transformation. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights into how Stoic teachings can revolutionize your approach to life. And we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts on how you've seen ego break down in your own life. Let's start the conversation. 1. Understanding ego and its role in human behavior. Ego. It's the invisible force driving most of what we do, even when we don't realize it. It's what pushes us to seek validation from others, to compare ourselves constantly, to crave admiration and praise. But what happens when that ego is challenged? What happens when it faces something or someone that doesn't need it, doesn't seek its approval, and isn't moved by its presence? The ego, long accustomed to being the center of attention, is shaken to its core. This is where the true power of Stoic wisdom begins to reveal itself. At its core, the ego is a construct of the mind, designed to protect us, but often to the detriment of our peace. It thrives on external validation, praise, recognition, and admiration from others. It is the driving force behind most of our social interactions, pushing us to constantly prove our worth. It's why we often seek to appear successful, attractive, or clever in the eyes of others, even when it doesn't align with our true values. The ego tells us we need things, possessions, status, and approval to feel complete. But what if you didn't need any of it? What if you could stand firm in who you are, unaffected by the judgments and opinions of others? For the Stoic, this is not a mere fantasy, but a reality they strive to live every day. Stoicism teaches that true happiness, peace, and fulfillment come not from external factors, but from within. The Stoic path is one of detachment from the constant demands of the ego, shifting focus from external validation to internal virtue. Here's where the story takes a twist. The moment you begin to practice this mindset, this ability to need nothing from others, it creates a subtle yet profound shift in your relationships. People around you, especially those driven by their own inflated egos, begin to feel uneasy. They don't know how to respond to someone who's not seeking approval or affection. The more you stand in your own power, needing nothing, the more they realize their own sense of self-worth is precariously dependent on external sources. As you peel away from the ego's grip, the illusion of needing others for your happiness disappears. But this act, this inner transformation, isn't always welcomed. In fact, it often threatens the ego of those who derive their sense of superiority from the constant need to be needed. And that is where the real power lies. You've disrupted their world. You've broken their ego without even lifting a finger. But how? Stick around as we delve deeper into how the Stoic philosophy allows you to shatter the very foundation of ego-driven behavior. The journey has just begun. 2. What it means to need nothing. The Stoic perspective. Picture this. You walk into a room and the atmosphere shifts. It's as if you're a force of nature, calm, unshaken, and completely at ease in your own skin. The subtle tension in the air? It's not from your presence, but from the realization that you need absolutely nothing from anyone. No admiration, no praise, no approval. You are enough as you are. This is the essence of Stoic wisdom, the power of needing nothing. In a world obsessed with the idea of more validation, more success, more material possessions, Stoicism offers an entirely different path. The Stoic doesn't chase after what the world tells them they need to be happy. Instead, they focus on one thing: self-sufficiency. The Stoics believe that true happiness and peace come from within, not from external sources. You don't need anyone's affirmation or approval. You don't need the latest gadget or the highest status. What you truly need is already inside you. At the heart of this philosophy is the concept of autarkia, a Greek term that translates to self-sufficiency. This isn't about living in isolation or rejecting society. It's about cultivating a mindset where your sense of well-being isn't dependent on external circumstances. Imagine the freedom of not needing anything from anyone, not needing their validation, not needing their approval, not needing to live up to their expectations. You begin to realize that everything you need to live a full and meaningful life is already within your grasp. Your happiness is no longer tethered to fleeting external factors, but anchored in the timeless virtues of wisdom, courage, and temperance. But here's the twist. As you step into this power, others start to notice. The very act of needing nothing sends a subtle but profound message. It makes those around you uncomfortable. Why? Because they're used to people chasing after approval, seeking to belong and craving admiration. Your detachment becomes a mirror to their own egos, showing them just how much they rely on external validation. It's an unsettling truth, one they might not even know how to process. And yet, this is the true beauty of Stoicism. You free yourself from the endless cycle of needing others to define you. As you embrace the Stoic mindset, you break free from the chains that bind most people to the ego. You no longer depend on the approval of others, and in doing so, you dismantle the fragile ego that controls their world. Are you ready to let go of needing anything and experience this transformative power for yourself? Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into Stoic wisdom. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Comment below and tell us, what would it look like for you to need nothing? The Stoic virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Imagine living a life where every decision you make is rooted in unshakable wisdom, boundless courage, unflinching justice, and unwavering temperance. A life where external circumstances can't move you and no ego can control you. This isn't a fantasy, it's the reality that the Stoic virtues can help you create. But here's the catch: it's not about acquiring power or control over others, it's about mastering yourself. The four Stoic virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, hold the key to living a life of true freedom, one where you need nothing, and the ego of others can't touch you. Let's start with wisdom. In a world overflowing with distractions, wisdom is the ability to see through the noise and focus on what truly matters. It's the clarity of mind that allows you to understand not just the world around you, but also yourself. The Stoics' pursuit of wisdom is the pursuit of truth. And when you see the truth clearly, you no longer rely on external approval to validate your existence. You know who you are, and you know what is in your control. The wisdom to detach from external validation frees you from the constant chase for status or praise. It's not about what others think, it's about what you know. Now think about courage, the strength to stand firm in your beliefs and values, regardless of the challenges or opinions around you. Courage isn't just about facing danger, it's about confronting your own fears and insecurities. When you embody courage, you stop fearing judgment or rejection. You begin to live unapologetically, rooted in the knowledge that your worth is not defined by the approval of others. And that in itself is a game changer. Your courage doesn't just free you, it unnerves those whose egos rely on the approval of others. Next comes justice. But this isn't the justice of the courts or legal systems, it's the internal sense of fairness and integrity. It's treating others with respect, not because you need them to like you, but because you understand their inherent worth as human beings. When you operate from a place of justice, you create harmony in your relationships. You no longer need to manipulate situations for personal gain or feed your ego through dominance or control. Justice ensures that your actions are always aligned with your values, leaving no room for the insecurities that fuel the ego. Finally, temperance, the art of self-control and moderation. In a world that constantly urges excess, temperance teaches restraint. It's not about depriving yourself, it's about recognizing that true satisfaction comes from within. When you practice temperance, you don't need the approval of others or the latest material possessions to feel content. You've learned to find peace in moderation, and that inner peace disrupts the egos of those who are constantly chasing more. The Stoic virtues create a powerful shield against the forces that drive ego and external validation. They make you resilient, independent, and unshaken. When you embody these virtues, you need nothing, and suddenly, the world around you seems less relevant. It's no longer about fitting in or seeking approval, it's about living authentically. And in doing so, you'll break the ego of anyone who relies on external validation to prop up their sense of self. Do you want to tap into the power of Stoic virtues and transform your life? Like, share, and subscribe for more wisdom, and leave a comment below. How could you start applying the Stoic virtues today to break free from the chains of ego? Let's dive deeper together. 4. Breaking the ego through self-sufficiency. What if the key to true power isn't in gaining more or achieving external success, but in needing nothing? Imagine stepping into a room filled with people whose entire existence revolves around seeking recognition and approval. Now picture yourself standing there, unshaken, without the need to impress anyone or validate your worth. You need nothing, and that very self-sufficiency begins to dismantle their carefully constructed egos. This is the profound yet unsettling power of Stoic self-sufficiency, a force so subtle that it often goes unnoticed, but so powerful that it shatters the fragile sense of self others have built. The Stoic concept of autarkia, or self-sufficiency, is far more than just an idea. It's a way of living. It's the practice of becoming emotionally independent from the validation of others. This means not relying on external success, admiration, or material possessions to define your sense of self. In today's world, where we're constantly encouraged to seek more recognition, more possessions, more status. This can feel like an almost impossible feat. But for the Stoic, true freedom comes from within. They believe that by cultivating self-sufficiency, we can break free from the invisible chains of societal expectations and live authentically. But here's the twist. When you stop needing others, it creates an odd, almost uncomfortable tension with the people around you. People who are accustomed to seeking external validation and approval can't understand how you can stand there, unaffected. It rattles their ego because they've built their entire sense of worth on others' perceptions. They depend on being needed, praised, or acknowledged. You, on the other hand, need none of it. This is where the real power of Stoicism comes into play. By practicing self-sufficiency, you don't play into the game of ego building. You don't need to manipulate or impress others. Instead, you focus inward, cultivating virtues like wisdom, courage, and temperance. You stop seeking out others' approval because you know deep down that your value is intrinsic. It's not tied to how others see you. And when you truly embody this sense of self-sufficiency, the ego of others begins to falter. Imagine how different your relationships would be if you no longer relied on others to validate your worth. It would change everything. You could interact with others from a place of equality without the need for power struggles, manipulation, or comparison. You wouldn't have to fit in or constantly seek affirmation. Instead, you'd be free to live authentically. This level of emotional independence can be so unsettling to others that it might even break the walls of their fragile egos. By embracing the Stoic principle of self-sufficiency, you stop being dependent on external factors for your happiness. And that, more than anything, has the power to disrupt the ego of those who are constantly chasing approval. Ready to break free from the cycle of validation and embrace your true self? Like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into Stoic wisdom. And don't forget to comment below. How would your life change if you embraced self-sufficiency today? Let's continue this journey together. The Stoic practice of indifference to external validation. Imagine a world where you are completely indifferent to praise, to criticism, to success or failure. A world where your sense of self-worth isn't tied to the judgments or opinions of others. What if, no matter what others said about you, whether they praised you or tore you down, it simply didn't matter? It sounds liberating, doesn't it? This is precisely what the Stoics teach. The ability to remain indifferent to external validation, to recognize that what others think of you is beyond your control, and that your happiness and peace must come from within. At the heart of Stoicism is the distinction between what is in our control and what is not. Our actions, our thoughts, and our reactions are within our control. The rest, what others say, what happens to us in the outside world, are not. And yet, most people live as if these external factors define their lives. We spend so much energy seeking others' approval, whether it's through social media likes, promotions, or compliments, that we lose sight of what really matters: internal peace and self-acceptance. But when you start to practice indifference to external validation, you break free from this cycle of dependence. Here's the powerful part. When you stop caring about external validation, you stop playing the ego game. The need for constant affirmation diminishes. You no longer seek to impress, win others' approval, or be the center of attention. You simply are, and in that being, you find peace. But here's where it gets interesting. This shift doesn't just affect you. It disturbs the people around you, especially those who rely heavily on external validation to define their sense of worth. When people who are driven by their egos encounter someone who is indifferent to external praise, it's like a mirror being held up to them. They realize that their self-worth is fragile and dependent on the very things you've freed yourself from. This can be unsettling for them because their sense of identity is tied to being noticed, acknowledged, and praised. You, however, are immune to this game, and this indifference to external validation begins to break down the walls of their ego. But how do you begin to practice this indifference? It starts with awareness, recognizing that you are not defined by what others think of you, that your value is intrinsic. Every time someone praises you, thank them, but don't let it dictate how you feel about yourself. When someone criticizes you, take it as constructive feedback, but don't let it diminish your sense of self. Over time, this indifference becomes second nature, and you become more centered, more peaceful, and more self-reliant. By embracing this Stoic practice, you not only gain freedom from the need to be validated by others, but you also begin to dismantle the egos around you, often without them even realizing it. You don't need anything from them, and that in itself is a quiet power. Are you ready to start practicing indifference and break free from the need for approval? Like, share, and subscribe for more Stoic insights. We want to hear from you. Comment below and tell us how you could apply the Stoic practice of indifference to your own life. Let's start the conversation. 6. The role of humility in Stoic wisdom. Humility, often misunderstood as weakness or submission, is in fact one of the most powerful weapons in the Stoics' arsenal. In a world where ego and pride dominate, humility becomes the quiet force that can dismantle even the strongest of egos. The Stoic doesn't boast, doesn't seek to elevate themselves above others, and certainly doesn't need validation to feel worthy. Instead, they practice humility, not as a self-deprecating behavior, but as a powerful recognition of their true place in the world. And here's the twist. This genuine humility has the potential to break the egos of those who live their lives in the shadow of pride. Humility, in the Stoic sense, isn't about diminishing yourself. It's about accepting your limitations and understanding that you are neither superior nor inferior to others. It's recognizing that you are part of something much larger than yourself, a universe governed by natural laws and realities that are beyond your control. A Stoic understands that their worth isn't measured by how much they possess, how many people admire them, or how powerful they appear. Instead, their worth lies in their character, in their wisdom, their courage, and their integrity. This is where humility becomes a game changer. The more you practice humility, the more you become immune to the distractions of ego. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to constantly seek recognition. When you walk into a room, you don't need the spotlight. You're content in the background, quietly confident in who you are. This very indifference to pride and superiority begins to unnerve those around you, especially those who derive their entire sense of identity from being better than others or seeking admiration. Your humility forces them to confront their own inflated sense of self. For people who live by the ego, your lack of need for recognition becomes a threat. Why? Because they don't know how to operate in a world where they're not the center of attention. When they can't manipulate others or use external validation to fuel their ego, they feel exposed. Humility not only deflects their attempts to bolster their self-image, but it also forces them to see the fragility of their own ego. In your quiet confidence and contentment, they face the uncomfortable truth that their sense of worth is reliant on things you've already let go of. But how do you cultivate this kind of humility? It starts with reflection. Recognize that every achievement, every success, and every failure is part of a larger, interconnected process. You are not the sole author of your life story, nor are you above others. Humility asks you to let go of the need for superiority and simply be present in each moment. When you practice humility, you break free from the cycle of comparison and pride that traps so many. You stop competing with others and you start competing only with yourself, becoming a better version of who you were yesterday, not who someone else is today. By embracing humility, you begin to dismantle the ego, not only in yourself, but in those around you. You don't need to flaunt your accomplishments or seek recognition. Instead, your quiet self-assurance and acceptance of your place in the world are enough. And in this process, you become a force of peace, wisdom, and strength, unshaken by the pride of others. Are you ready to embrace humility and discover the true power of self-awareness? Like, share, and subscribe for more on how Stoic wisdom can transform your life. We'd love to hear your thoughts. How has humility played a role in your life? Comment below and join the conversation. 7. How a lack of desire for validation can threaten others' ego. Have you ever noticed how unsettling it is for some people when they can't get the reaction they expect from others? They thrive on being admired, noticed, and praised. But what happens when you show up and need none of that? What happens when you stop playing into their game of ego and external validation? You become a force that threatens the very foundation of their self-worth. The very fact that you need nothing from them starts to erode their carefully constructed sense of identity, built on the belief that others are there to validate them. The human ego, fragile and constantly seeking affirmation, relies heavily on the feedback loop of external validation. It's as if we're all unwittingly participants in an unspoken social contract. You praise me, and I feel validated. I praise you, and you feel validated. But what happens when someone enters the scene who is indifferent to this exchange? Someone who doesn't need to be noticed, doesn't need compliments, and certainly doesn't need anyone's approval to feel complete. For this person, external validation has no value. They are already whole. Here's where it gets interesting. This lack of desire for validation often leads to discomfort and even insecurity in those whose egos are built on being the center of attention. It forces them to question their own worth. If you don't need their approval, then what does that say about their role in your life? They begin to realize that their sense of importance relies on your need for them. They are only as valuable as the amount of validation they can extract from others. When they can't do this with you, it creates a void, an unsettling feeling that makes them confront the hollowness of their own ego. Think about it. People who seek constant affirmation often struggle with feelings of inadequacy when their validation isn't reciprocated. When they can't get a reaction, they panic. They'll try harder, flaunt their achievements, boast about their successes, hoping for some sort of acknowledgement. But none of this works on someone who needs nothing. The Stoic, grounded in self-sufficiency, stands unaffected by their attempts to stir up attention or admiration. Your indifference becomes a mirror, reflecting back their dependence on external validation. This dynamic can be especially powerful in social and professional settings. Imagine working in an environment where everyone is vying for recognition, promotions, or praise. Now imagine you step in, confident in your own self-worth, not needing validation from anyone. You don't feed into the competition. Instead of seeking approval, you focus on doing your best for the sake of personal growth. That subtle shift in behavior is all it takes to rattle the egos of those around you. Your lack of desire for validation shows them how empty their own dependency on external praise truly is. And it's uncomfortable. It's a reminder that their self-worth is precarious, always dependent on the opinions and approval of others. The Stoic way is liberating, but it's also unsettling for those who are still trapped in the cycle of external validation. It's not that you're doing anything to hurt them, it's simply the natural consequence of needing nothing. You force others to reckon with the very thing they fear most, their own vulnerability and dependency on validation. And in doing so, you break their ego without even trying, ready to stop seeking validation and start living from a place of inner strength. Like, share, and subscribe for more Stoic insights. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever seen someone's ego crumble when they realized you needed nothing from them? Comment below and join the conversation. 8. The power of emotional detachment in breaking the ego. Imagine a world where your emotions are not ruled by external circumstances, where the praise of others doesn't inflate your self-worth and the criticism of others doesn't bring you down. In this world, your sense of peace remains unwavering, regardless of what happens around you. This is the power of emotional detachment, a core practice in Stoic philosophy that allows you to break free from the chaotic tug-of-war between approval and disapproval. By detaching from the need for emotional validation, you not only protect your own peace, but you also create a shift in those around you, especially those whose egos rely on the constant ups and downs of emotional highs and lows. Emotional detachment doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or becoming cold and indifferent to others. Instead, it's the ability to observe your emotions without being controlled by them. It's about recognizing that your emotions are responses to external events, but they don't have to define you. Stoics teach that we can't always control the world around us, but we can control how we react to it. When you practice emotional detachment, you choose not to react impulsively to praise, criticism, or any external event that would normally stir your emotions. So, what does this have to do with breaking the ego? Everything. Ego thrives on emotional turbulence. It feeds off the highs of praise and the lows of criticism. When you react emotionally to external validation, you give the ego power. The ego's hunger for recognition and affirmation grows stronger each time you attach your worth to someone else's opinion. But when you detach emotionally, you take away the ego's fuel. You no longer play into the drama of approval or rejection. You stand firm in your own sense of self, unaffected by what others think of you. But this emotional detachment can be unsettling for those around you, especially those whose egos are fueled by emotional reactions. Imagine someone who constantly seeks affirmation, only to be met with your calm, composed indifference. Their attempts to elicit a reaction from you, to make you feel inferior or superior, fall flat. They can't manipulate your emotions because you are no longer emotionally invested in their approval or disapproval. For them, this is a profound disruption. Their entire sense of worth is tied to the emotional highs and lows they create with others. When you refuse to engage in this emotional exchange, their ego is shaken to its core. This is the power of emotional detachment. It doesn't just protect your own emotional well-being, it disrupts the fragile foundations of ego in others. People who rely on emotional reactions to feel validated can't fathom a world where you are unaffected. Your serenity becomes a mirror to their own emotional volatility, and that, in turn, forces them to confront the reality that their self-worth is, in fact, precarious and dependent on the opinions and emotions of others. In the end, practicing emotional detachment doesn't mean becoming numb. It means becoming emotionally free. It means finding peace in knowing that your emotions don't need to be swayed by the tides of external judgment. When you stop feeding the ego through emotional reactions, you break free from its control. And often you break the ego of those around you as well. Are you ready to embrace emotional detachment and break free from the chaos of ego-driven reactions? Like, share, and subscribe for more insights on how Stoic wisdom can empower you to live with greater peace and emotional freedom. We'd love to hear from you. How do you manage your emotional responses in a world driven by ego? Comment below and join the discussion. 9. The ultimate freedom, detaching from the need for others' approval. What if the greatest source of your power lies not in gaining approval, but in completely detaching from the need for it? Imagine living in a world where no one's opinion, whether good or bad, has the ability to sway your sense of self. In this world, your confidence doesn't hinge on others' praise, nor does your peace depend on avoiding their criticism. You simply stand as you are, grounded in your own self-worth, needing nothing. This is the ultimate freedom, the ability to detach from the constant craving for others' approval, and it is the key to breaking the fragile ego of not just yourself, but those around you. The need for approval is something we all experience to varying degrees. From childhood to adulthood, we seek affirmation and validation, often without realizing how much it controls our decisions, emotions, and sense of self. We chase likes on social media, seek praise from colleagues or friends, and mold ourselves into what we think others want us to be. The Stoics, however, saw this dependence on external validation as a path to inner turmoil. They understood that true freedom could only be found when we detach ourselves from this need. As Epictetus, the famous Stoic philosopher, once said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." The Stoic approach is liberating, by accepting that you cannot control what others think of you, and by realizing that their approval or disapproval does not define your worth. You free yourself from the chains of ego. You no longer seek external validation to feel validated. You become your own source of confidence and contentment. You begin to see that your true value lies not in what others think, but in your ability to live in alignment with your own virtues, regardless of external opinion. But here's where the shift happens. When you detach from needing approval, it often makes others uncomfortable. People who are used to thriving off admiration, praise, or attention can't help but be disturbed by someone who is indifferent to their judgment. Your indifference to approval challenges their very sense of self, which is often based on being admired or validated by others. It's a subtle yet powerful disruption. When they realize you need nothing from them, they begin to see just how fragile their own sense of worth is. They rely on external feedback to build their ego, and you, by contrast, have become a mirror reflecting their dependency on approval. This creates a tension as their ego feels threatened by your self-sufficiency. You've broken the illusion that validation from others is what gives them meaning, and in doing so, you disrupt the very foundation on which their sense of identity rests. You've not only liberated yourself, but also illuminated the fragility of their ego-driven existence. Detaching from the need for approval is not about rejecting others, but about understanding that their opinions are external and beyond your control. It's a practice of inner sovereignty, where you become the sole judge of your worth. You no longer need to rely on others to affirm your identity or actions. This is the ultimate freedom, and it's a power that not only transforms your life, but also quietly dismantles the ego of those around you. Are you ready to break free from the need for approval and embrace your own inner strength? Like, share, and subscribe for more insights into Stoic wisdom and its transformative power. We want to hear from you. How could detaching from the need for others' approval change your life? Comment below and join the conversation. Conclusion: embrace the freedom of Stoic wisdom. As we reach the end of our journey through the powerful teachings of Stoicism, one thing becomes clear: true freedom comes from within. The Stoic wisdom we've explored, needing nothing, embracing humility, breaking free from the ego, reveals that we don't have to chase validation, recognition, or approval to live meaningful, fulfilling lives. When we detach from external validation, we find a peace and strength that can't be shaken by the opinions of others. In doing so, not only do we break free from our own egos, but we also challenge and disrupt the fragile egos of those around us. Stoic wisdom teaches us to find our worth in the virtues we cultivate: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, rather than in the fleeting praise of the world. It reminds us that the greatest power lies not in seeking validation, but in being content and whole without it. When you embrace this mindset, you become free from the endless pursuit of approval, and in turn create a profound sense of peace that others can't easily shake. You are the master of your own self-worth, and that is a freedom few will ever truly understand. So, let go of the need to be validated by others. Embrace the quiet power of needing nothing. Cultivate inner peace and watch how your life transforms as you step into the freedom of living authentically. Thank you for joining me on this Stoic journey. If you found value in this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more wisdom that can empower you to live a more fulfilled and ego-free life. And remember, your thoughts matter, so leave a comment below and share how Stoic principles have influenced your approach to life. I look forward to continuing this conversation with you. Until next time, live with wisdom, courage, and calm.